named Ngari, welcoming our viewers from Kenya and around the world. This is Global Glance, giving you an in-depth look at what is making headlines all across the globe. With the help of our experts, we get to look at matters arts and culture as well as politics. But first, let's have the headlines. H&M stores in South Africa were vandalized after the firm put a 5-year black model boy in a sweatshirt that read "Coolest Monkey in the Jungle." The firm has moreover had to face the fallout of some celebrities, including The Weeknd and G-Eazy, who cut their contracts with the firm. Among celebrities who have called out the firm include basketball superstar LeBron James, musicians T.I. and P. Diddy. In fact, P. Diddy took to Twitter, rephrasing the term "coolest monkey in the jungle" with "coolest king in the world." Elsewhere, Cambridge Analytica, after having to face the scandal of harvesting private Facebook users' data, has filed for bankruptcy and ended up dissolving into a firm by the name Emma Data Limited. Emma Data, on the other hand, is a firm that was founded by former employees of Cambridge Analytica. And now on to a story of the day. Jan Kuciak, a Slovak journalist, was shot dead with his fiancée Martina. This was in their home. The investigative journalist is said to have been investigating a story that linked the high-ranking Slovak government officials with an Italian organized crime group by the name the Ndrangheta. The aftermath? Key government officials, including Prime Minister Robert Fico and his entire cabinet, resigned. This is as there are reports that tens of thousands of Slovakians took to the streets to protest against the murder of this particular journalist. This will form our discussion of today. Remember, you can chime into the conversation. Our Twitter handle is @GlobalGlance. We shall have our experts today: a journalist with NTV, Mr. Dan Mule, a lecturer and KFCB employee, Ms. Caroline Joroge, as well as a student come freelance journalist, Mr. Hassan Hassan. Keep it Global Glance. Now, lack of press freedom, as well as the manipulation of the same, is often said to be something for the totalitarian types of states. However, the same was experienced just a couple of months in Kenya. During the swearing-in of the people's president, opposition leader Raila Odinga, 3 main television networks, that is NTV, KTN and Citizen TV, were shut down. This is even as President Uhuru Kenyatta, during the 2013 Media Freedom Day, said,
"In appreciation and support of the critical role the media plays in our society, my government will prioritize media freedom."
Now let's get to see some of the sentiments of the Kenyans on Twitter. And on to the sentiments by Kenyans on Twitter during the media shutdown. At XJav said, "In this time and age, it is very ridiculous, insane, wanting, or whichever adjective fitting the description, that media freedom is still in someone's control." At General Gosho says, "And now we're back to the dark days. How can Citizen TV and radio be shut? But the Twitter streets are on fire. The media can never be silenced." At Joel Naburuk said, "Freedom of conscience, of education, of speech, of assembly are among the very fundamentals of democracy, and all of them would be nullified should the freedom of press ever be successfully challenged." Remember, you can contribute to the conversation. Our Twitter handle is @GlobalGlance. For now, let's get to our correspondent Kelvin Kimaili, who will be looking into investigative journalism.
African journalists is that we have to redefine journalism according to our content and the context in which we operate. Else we will lag behind. Look, it is our continent. Our problems are very different from those in the West. I'm saying that democracy in America and the UK is going through all the sifting through and cleaning and all that. And it's good today, and we can clap for it because people sacrifice for it. I'm saying that this kind of journalism, if you went back into history, there were times that it was absolutely necessary for those iconic democracies. We are not yet there now. It is our turn to sanitize our democracy too. And we cannot sanitize that democracy by swallowing hook, line, and sinker what has been cooked in Harvard or any other part of the world.
That is Mr. Anas Aremeyo Anas, an award-winning Ghanaian investigative journalist who lives by the policy shame and jail.
So I say that before I call anybody a criminal, I'll give you the hardcore evidence. Hardcore evidence put together with my hidden cameras. I'll show you when you plotted to steal, how you stole it, and where you took that stolen item to. That's the journalism I believe in. Now, there is nothing irritating than doing a piece of work and seeing that evil person that you have pursued walk on the same street with you.
According to Oxford bibliographies, investigative reporting dates back to the 17th century.
Scholars have traced exposés back to the first ever media outlet, the newspaper.
The practice became a newspaper staple during the scandal-seeking sensationalistic era later in the 19th century, when reporters such as Nellie Bly became celebrity investigators. However, it became full-blown in the early 1970s after the Watergate scandal. Reporters got to reveal the involvement of the 37th United States President, Richard Nixon, with the burglary of the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate office complex in Washington, D.C. The aftermath? The reportage of the Watergate scandal led to the resignation of Richard Nixon. Laws on presidential impeachment got to be drafted, and 69 other officials in the Nixon administration were indicted. In matters journalism, the Watergate scandal was then followed by the exposés such as the Panama Papers expose, among many. Such are some of the milestones that took place in the journalism profession overseas, although Mr. Anas says the same cannot be said for African journalism.
You can study African journalism over the last 100 years, and you tell me what's the results we've had. What we have attempted to do over the years is to create monsters, because we scratch the surface of the stories, and it emboldens the bad guys, and they come after us. If you look at the index, CPI, you see that the number of African great journalists who have fallen over the years, it's alarming. Because we do not take care of our people well. When I say our people, I mean the bad guys.
According to some students of journalism, the investigative route is too much to handle.
I cannot do investigative journalism because first I don't have the passion to. Then I cannot risk my life because it's something that is really risky. I rather do reporting or anchoring than investigative journalism.
Okay, personally, I would not venture into investigative journalism as a career for me because I think it's not really what I signed up for when I was taking this course, and I don't think I'm ready to take all the risks it deserves.
An independent press, a vibrant private sector, a civil society, these are the things, according to Mr. Anas, that give life to a democracy. Reporting for Global Glance, my name is Kelvin Kimaili.
Thank you, Kelvin, for that comprehensive feature. However, I'd just like to get your point of view. Do you really think that all journalists should actually be investigative journalists, as Mr. Aremeyo says?
Journalism is all about finding out. And today we live in a world whereby journalists give us half-baked information. We are not given the full information. We are more of social media journalists. I think if it takes all of us to going back to being investigative journalists, provided we give information that is right, correct, informative, and goes beyond just the limits of being watchdogs and the gatekeepers in society, then so be it, provided we give the right information and we go to the way journalism is supposed to be, the why it is journalism, the what we are called to do.
Thank you once again, and now back to our social media feedback.
At John Bataru saying press freedom must be there, all freedoms must be upheld. At Brenda Nyongesa says in this time and age it is very hard to oppress the media given that there is the freedom of social media.
Thank you for the feedback. Remember, you can chime into the conversation. The Twitter handle is @GlobalGlance. And as earlier promised, we will be getting deeper into the conversation with the help of our experts. And joining now is Miss Caroline Njoroge, KFCB, that is the Kenya Film of Classification Board's employee as well as a lecturer of media and film studies in Daystar University. So do you think that press freedom is something that actually exists in the real world?
Well, I must say it's the ideal of what is expected to be, but it's not necessarily what it is. And what am I talking about? Whose freedom are we talking about in the first place? When you do talk about press freedom, is it press freedom for the sake of journalists, or is it freedom for the sake of the people that you want to tell the truth or what is currently ongoing? Or is it press freedom of the person who's being prosecuted because of the stories that you want to reveal? But then the ideal should be there, but it really doesn't exist.
Considering what it seems that governments don't really care about press freedom, do you think it's worth the struggle to risk your whole life over one story as opposed to, sparing your life to cover 1,000 other stories?
Investigative journalism, I would pretty much say one, it's all about the call. I mean, journalism is almost like a call. It's like when you have a priest within a church, you have a nurse in a hospital, you have a doctor in a hospital, that kind of setup. So you ought to be having and asking yourself the fundamental question, you as a journalist, one, are you ready to go the extra mile to do this story? And then, of course, brings in the question that you're asking is that governments really don't seem to care in as much as you investigate and reveal what is the essence of the story. But for you, the underlying question should be, when you're doing the story, what's your take on it? What do you really want to do with that story, now that you want to investigate? And then finally, the truth is out. Whose truth is it? That's the other thing that you should be asking yourself. And then over and above that, for me, I always say that if you're able to change somebody's life with your story, it is worth the struggle.
What would be your take, Ms. Njoroge, on the media blackouts that we faced during the swearing in of the people's president?
I think it was really uncalled for because in as much as they shut down the mainstream media, people were able to follow proceedings online. Therefore, you really, who are you shutting down the systems for? Just to oppress the media?
Also joining us in the program, Mr. Dan Mule, a journalist with NTV. How was this particular experience for you people?
Personally, I was affected directly and indirectly. Directly by the fact that I was having an interview that particular afternoon at exactly 1:30 p.m. when Raila Odinga was expected to be sworn in at 2 p.m. So I had my guests ready in studio waiting for me to start the interview. Then, boom, the shutdown went.
And finally, Ms. Njoroge, according to the Press Freedom Index that was carried out by one organization known as Reporters Without Borders, it is said that Norway ranks at position 1. However, there's no consideration of the quality of journalism. So between quality of journalism and press freedom, which one for you takes the cake?
Press freedom versus quality of journalism. Of course, quality of journalism is what comes first, because without quality, there's no freedom.
Thank you so much for your time. Journalism student and freelance journalist Hassan, welcome to the program. What do you think? Do you think investigative journalism is worth the struggle?
I think in any environment, in any so-called democracy, investigative journalism is a very important part of the practice of journalism in any country, in any democracy, like I said. Because yes, we might, critics might say that, okay, the resources that is spent on chasing that one important story could have helped do 100 of other stories. But the impact of this one story has on the environment or in the in a country compared to the 100 stories is bigger. So investigative journalism really is, at the end of the day, you can only do investigative journalism if you're passionate about it.
Still on the Norway case, yes, they are granted the press freedom by the government. However, according to the study, they face a lot of threats from other groups, say the Islamic fundamentalists. So according to you, Mr. Dan Mule, what do you make of this?
Yeah, there could be that kind of a freedom provided by the government, but again, it's very possible to also have some other people, some other entities, because it's not always the government that oppresses this kind of freedom. For example, we have the so-called cartels. In Kenya, for instance, talking about the period towards the 2017 general elections, that is the 8th of August general elections, the repeat presidential election, the 26th of November. We had so many cases of journalists being victimized in different areas in the country, in Kisumu, in Nairobi, where journalists were beaten by the residents, and also they were also beaten and victimized by the police. Not because the police don't know these personalities, but because they felt these people are airing what you are doing.
And now that tens of thousands of Slovaks took to the streets to protest against the murder of Jan Kuciak, do you think this is something that Kenyans would actually do?
I think when we look at when a lot of Slovakians, they went to the streets and they protested, and this brought down their government, is that we have to ask ourselves, we as Kenyans, what is the level of media literacy in this country? At the end of the day, when a whole president can come out and say newspapers are for wrapping meat, and people applauding, then you realize that people do not really understand the power of the press. Second thing is that we really need to look at our internal press in itself. Are we practicing the best ethical journalism? We have a lot of stories of journalists who are given brown envelopes. So you have in one side a government that is elected by the people to oppress the press that we have in this country, and then you have a press that is also not really practicing the best ethical journalism. So you have this conflation of a press that is bought by the highest bidder and a government elected by the people who do not trust the press. So once you bring this thing together and you ask, can somebody protest really when a journalist is killed in Kenya? Never.
Thank you so much, Hassan and Mr. Dan Mule. That will be it for our expert segment. Remember, you can keep talking to us on social media. Let's get on to what people are saying as of now.
At Davy says, beyond freedom of journalism and quality of journalism, there should be first and foremost the proper training of the same. Masimumo saying a passion for the call matters the most, and a passion for journalism equals a passion for humanity.
Thank you, Masi, for that opinion. I really do second you. It all goes down to passion. And for my take today, in the words of renowned CNN journalist Christiane Amanpour, the difference between a democracy and dictatorship is truth and lies. In the wake of citizen journalism on social media, where, to be honest, quality of journalism is not really a consideration, I do believe in the remnants in the mainstream media who are to do the checks and balances. And yeah, the journalism profession might be a sellout, as people may want to call it, but I do believe in the few who actually spend sleepless nights in research and, again, some time in not so willing sources of information, just to make sure that the public actually gets the truth that it deserves to know. Power to the fourth estate. That will be Global Glance today. My name is Ngari. Remember to join us next time. Thank you for watching.